I've done it! I found one! Finally a video, and it's called I Mocked Religion Until This Happened. Sobbing, ugly, crying face. What could this happening be? I don't know, but it put an end to all that mocking.
I've been consuming a lot of atheist content on TikTok recently.
Wait, hold on. I gotta stop you right out of the gate here. Consuming content? People are voluntarily describing their own actions this way? That's the kind of term some manager would use to talk about a spreadsheet of engagement metrics. Embrace humanity, bro. Come back to us.
Because I'm trying to familiarize myself with that other side of the spectrum.
Alright, well, I'm not sure if TikTok is a place to get a serious understanding of anything, but maybe I'm wrong.
And what I've come to find out is atheist TikTok is just raw emotion. They are projecting a lot of their trauma. They're vehemently vitriolic and vindictive. They're insulting. They're arrogant.
He's overly critical. He never listens.
Okay, so pretty standard stuff here. Atheists are mean and angry and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, some are, some aren't, just like everybody else. You know this, come on. I don't know what the state of TikTok exactly is. I suppose it skews younger, so maybe you get more of those, freshly deconverted, energetic youths. The kind that people like to complain about, the aggressive and not all that knowledgeable ones who like to use a lot of catchphrases and prepackaged arguments. And yes, oftentimes a bigger quantity of insults. I'm not saying that is how it is, but if it's a younger group, it's quite possible there's more of that. I don't have too much insight into that. I'm over here on YouTube. From my viewpoint, a lot of atheists took that angry atheist criticism to heart, maybe a little bit too much, to the point that a lot of the bigger channels have a way too soft of an attitude for my taste. No teeth at all, just gums and lips, giving a wet, sloppy suck to the arguments. I think there's a happy medium. Back when I was younger, I was a lot harsher and oftentimes unnecessarily, and it could come off a bit silly. Granted, though, I started so long ago we were still in the direct aftermath of the popularity of Angry Video Game Nerd and this huge wave of critical channels that took that kind of style. And I wasn't directly taking off of that or anything, but of course you are influenced by the cultural moment you exist in, and that kind of stuff was very much the culture. On all sides, not just atheists, religious people too. So there kind of was a reason why people were approaching things that way, myself included. But so over the years I've moderated that a bit, but I try to walk the line where harshness and rudeness and insults and so on are still an available option when they're earned, which I find to be a very reasonable line for society as a whole. I think it's important to listen to what people are saying, take them seriously, engage with them intellectually and respectfully if they're being respectful about it. But if someone's being a total idiot, you still have to be able to say that. Otherwise, everything eventually falls apart and we all end up living in the dirt eating slugs. I think I might have left out a few steps in the middle there somewhere. You can fill in the details yourself. What are we talking about?
They build a lot of emotional arguments that aren't really grounded in anything objective.
Right, and they shouldn't be doing that, right? This is not praise, this is criticism. Okay, well then I'm going to keep that clip, because I have a weird feeling this is going to be relevant later.
There are a lot of fallacious arguments built off of false presuppositions.
Look, I'm sure on atheist TikTok, people make a lot of bad arguments. There's plenty of people, there's going to be bad arguments. Have you ever watched Muslim TikTok? For that matter, and I hate to go to this right away, but did you ever read the Quran? If you were going to choose 7 words to describe basically everything in that book, you could do worse than the ones you chose. Vitriolic, vindictive, insulting, arrogant, emotional, projection, and fallacious. Show me a TikTok of some atheist acting that way, and I'll tell you they're acting stupid. I wonder if you would do the same about the Quran if I showed it to you, or if this is only a problem when it's convenient.
Yeah, it's just a sad existence.
An atheist who isn't feeling especially inclined towards nuance today could very easily venture over to your side of the spectrum on TikTok and make the same generalizations about your group. Do you really think there's any actual value in what you're saying beyond just reinforcing the pre-existing biases of random Muslims? Probably not, honestly. That's most likely the whole point of this. I wonder if you even actually bothered to consume the content, or if you're just saying you did that. You have no examples. You're not gonna have examples. No specifics, no details. You're speaking entirely in broad, commonly held stereotypes. There's no sign in this entire video that you have any particular insight beyond what you might have already heard from your co-religionists. Nothing about this requires you to have engaged with anything, so who knows if you actually even wasted the time bothering to do it.
Atheists live in this realm of uncertainty and ambiguity, and they're indifferent to that uncertainty and ambiguity.
That sounds incredibly cool, and it's true of some of us, no doubt. But don't you feel bad not knowing? Don't give a shit. Unfortunately, it's just not a general truth. People do struggle with uncertainty, ambiguity, maybe even more so, and a lot of people don't acknowledge it or even feel like they have it. There are a lot of people out there who think, no, I know how things are. This is the way they are. I'm sure of it, and you can't convince me otherwise. Very common. That's a very common human thing in general. Atheism does not need to go hand in hand with a feeling of uncertainty. These are two separate things. Having said that, of course, uncertainty comes up as a topic a lot in these conversations. Intellectual honesty will tend to lead you to that. And if someone has left a religion that taught them since they were born that they have perfect absolute knowledge of all this stuff, the way the universe is, the nature of life and death, and so on, then the sudden lack of that unjustified religious overconfidence will be a topic of conversation. And it will, in many cases, result in serious internal struggle. For me, having never been religious, that indifference you talk about to uncertainty kind of was the default state. I didn't really ever have to struggle to deal with it. I just know that I don't know things. But I might even be unusual for my background. People with my background still struggle with uncertainty, but people with a religious background I think struggle a lot worse. A lot of them do, not all of them. And that indifference you talk about is anything but easy to obtain. If anything, it's kind of an ideal end state where you finally come to peace with your humanity and accept that as a human, you just won't know most things, including the fundamental nature of reality.
And they cope by trying to convince themselves and others that we should be okay and comfortable living in this uncertainty.
Well, you should, for your own well-being. If you don't know something and you know you don't know it, what are you going to do? Pretend? Well, if you already figured out religion's bullshit, there's a much lower chance that that kind of thinking's going to work anymore. If it does somehow, I guess more power to you, whatever. But assuming that that doesn't work, what else do you want to do? Be super sad about it all day, every day? Cry yourself to sleep about it every night? Oh, maybe you will at first, but that doesn't seem like a long-term solution. That doesn't really seem like a tenable way to live, does it? At some point, maybe you'll have to go through something like a mourning process, coming to terms with the falsehood of what you thought was true, and with a new truth, which is that there just isn't a replacement for it. You seem to be talking people down for accepting what you and maybe even they see as an unfortunate fact, instead of living in permanent denial. But I don't see what the problem is. I see no nobility in the alternative. It seems like pure cowardice to hide your head in the sand to avoid facing the truth.
And it's just an uncomfortable way of living.
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, it's uncomfy. Guys, look, I know that you want to acknowledge the fact that you don't know everything, but it makes me uncomfy, okay? Okay, fine. Go away, delude yourself with whatever you want to avoid being uncomfy. You gigantic pussy. Oh, there's the insults coming out. But see, he deserved it. This is so pathetic, it makes me want to gag.
Like, they acknowledge the natural inclination for a human being to desperately seek the answers to life's greatest questions, like, why are we here, where do we come from, and where are we going?
Desperately? No, I think that's very much trained. But human curiosity? Yes, of course. We're a very, very curious species. And being honest with yourself and others and admitting that you don't know the answer does not prevent this seeking. Go seek. In fact, if anything, recognizing that you don't already have the answer is a prerequisite for going to look for it. And these things together, the recognition of our ignorance and our willingness to seek for an answer, is, for example, what science is. Humans seeking out real answers that are justified. This is in contrast to religion where, sure, people are also seeking out answers, but only in the sense of looking for some other person to hand them the answer fully formed, because it's just uncomfortable to think that maybe the answers are inaccessible without a great deal of effort, and maybe some questions are unanswerable because they're poorly formed, like, what is the meaning of life? Being comfortable with uncertainty and being able to get through the day without breaking down into a sobbing mess about it doesn't mean you can't be curious and go find things out. People do that all the time and it's wonderful. Intellectual honesty does not mean resigning yourself to never knowing anything ever.
And religion provides all of those answers.
Yeah, no, but see, that's the problem, is it purports to, but it doesn't. At least it's not at all obvious that the answers that it claims to provide are actually the answers, that they're actually true. And if you look at the claimed answers of religion and the reasons why the religious claim you should believe them, and it doesn't convince you, then that's not going to work for you. You're either going to go seek out answers that are more likely true, or just not, and be comfortable being human, not knowing some things. Personally, I would say I fall somewhere in the middle of that. I'm kind of curious. I look into different answers and stuff, but I'm not real hung up about it. And most of my life, I just kind of do life stuff. Do you have a problem with this? Does it make you uncomfortable?
But an atheist just shrugs their shoulder all the time or just says it's subjective. Like, what is the meaning of life? I don't know. It's whatever you make of it. Where do we come from? I don't know. Nobody knows, and it's okay if we don't know. Okay, then where are we going? I don't know. Nobody knows, and it's okay if we don't know. And it's just...
Well, again, none of this is an atheist thing. These are separate issues, separate questions. You can think these questions have objective answers and you know them. And many people do. And in fact, I would say that about at least two of the questions that you had there. What is the meaning of life? Well, I think I know the answer to that objectively is there isn't one imposed from outside. That's not a shrug, it's just an answer you don't like. Another one was, where are we going? Which I can only assume means what happens after you die. My answer is you're dead. Your experiences are over. No shrug, no, it's subjective. No, that's my answer, and you don't like it. Boo-hoo. And then where do we come from? Well, it's a little bit stupidly formulated, but what is the origin of humanity, I think is reasonably well answered. What is the origin of life is slightly less well answered, but it's getting there. It's pretty good. What is the origin of the universe, if any? That one's trickier. For now, I would put that very much in the nobody knows category, sure. Whatever the answer is, it's going to be objective fact that we discover at some point, or don't. This is not a subjective matter. So it sort of depends what you mean by the question. You don't seem to ask questions very clearly. But to the extent that I accept any answer, I'm sure that you don't like my answer. And I guess your options are deal with it or cry about it. And since you seem to have a problem with the idea of sucking it up and dealing with stuff you don't like, I guess you're going to choose cry about it.
I don't know. It's just an uncomfortable way to live, I think.
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
They build a lot of emotional arguments that aren't really grounded in anything objective.
Again with the it's uncomfy thing. So your priority doesn't seem to be whether it's true or not. You know, whether we maybe actually don't know some stuff. Or we do know and it's true and you don't like the answer. You haven't even brought that up. You haven't said anybody's wrong here. You said it makes you feel uncomfortable and sad to think about. Well, what's that got to do with anything? Clearly people in my camp are not interested in believing comfortable lies. Why are you? I can't understand why anyone would think that's better.
And the one thing I'll see the most is atheists bringing up these hypothetical terrible situations like this child who has cancer or this woman who got violated or natural disasters and blaming God for it.
Okay, I doubt they're literally blaming God for it. This sounds like part of an argument, specifically the problem of evil. Someone who doesn't believe in God is not blaming God for those events. If they're talking about God doing those things, they're making an internal critique of your theistic framework. They're treating the existence of God as true for the sake of argument.
And it's so interesting to me because these people are so quick to blame God when something bad happens. But when these same people wake up in a comfy house from their comfy bed, brush their teeth, and make their favorite coffee and their favorite...
I think that's plenty to get the point. He goes on like this for another 30 seconds.
And these people thank nobody for that.
Hold on now. You know, maybe I should have played the whole thing, but I still don't want to. What I'm going to do is just quickly rattle through all the things he said in it. A comfy house, a comfy bed, getting to brush your teeth, coffee, breakfast, having a car with air conditioning, a grocery store, a gym, going to a job to make money, buying things, having vacations, video games, hanging out with family and friends. And then as we heard, he finishes it off with this.
And these people thank nobody for that. They live an absolutely thankless life.
You ridiculous, lying swine. You know, when you see people getting upset, tossing insults around, sometimes it is unreasonable, but other times it's because you're behaving like this. You're telling me atheists go through all those events in their entire day without ever saying thank you to anyone for anything. But of course they do say thank you to people who are real. People they have an actual relationship with, at least to the extent that the person's standing in front of them right now. What they don't thank, for I would think obvious reasons, is the fantasy that's in your head and not theirs. But they blame God for no, they don't. They do not. No atheist blames God for anything. Period. This is not some situation where God gets all the blame and none of the thanks. You're failing to grasp the situation entirely.
Who do they thank for any of that stuff?
Well, let's see. The person they bought the house from, the person who bought the house for them, the person whose house it is they live in, the realtor and the lawyer who facilitated the sale. Probably not really anybody for the toothbrushing, I suppose. They do that pretty much on their own. Not a lot of people writing thank you letters to Colgate, and I think that's fine. I think the money's probably sufficient. The person who pours them coffee, the person who makes them coffee, the person who buys them coffee, the person who cooks them breakfast, the person who serves them breakfast, the person who fixes the car, the person who gave them the car, the person whose car they borrowed, the person checking them out at the grocery store, the attendant at the gym, their spotter at the gym, the person who hired them at their job, the person who hands them their paycheck, the person who helps them at their job, the travel agent who booked the vacation, the desk clerk at the hotel, the ticket person at Disneyland, whoever bought them the video game they're playing, their mom who bought them their console. And if you're hanging out with family and friends, whoever invited you over, maybe they gave you a beer, served you a meal, showed you hospitality, thank you. Maybe you brought a bottle of wine, thank you. Thanks for coming, thanks for having me. They thank people who did things. And I'm sure that if they thought some supernatural entity was doing things for them too, they would thank that too. But they don't think it's there, so they don't. That does not seem like an unreasonable standard. I'm sorry, I don't have all day to thank everything I don't think is there, because that's infinite things. I would literally do nothing else with my time.
Who do they thank for any of that stuff? Nobody.
Oh yeah, never mind, I was wrong. It's nobody. Atheists thank nobody, ever, for anything. Look, I can talk in my video here about people saying thank you, but as soon as I want to say thank you to my wife for something, it drops right out of my head. It's totally bizarre. I have no idea how that works.
And it's just baffling to me.
Oh, it's baffling to you. This thing you made up yourself 5 seconds ago is baffling to you. Well, stop making things up then, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
That they just accept everything as the standard and as the norm, and don't have any gratitude for any of those things that they experience. But as soon as one little bad thing happens, oh, it's God's fault.
Again, stop making things up and you won't confuse yourself. That is not a thing that happens. You're hearing people talk about the problem of evil argument, and for whatever reason, you're completely failing to grasp why these things are being mentioned.
You know that feeling that you get when you open the door for somebody and they don't say thank you?
You must be an atheist. Hey, what if you held the door for somebody and they looked right past you at the sky and said, "Thank you, God, for opening this door for me"? That's kind of how I see you talking about thanking God for your house and your bed and your car.
It's this icky feeling where you're like, I don't like that person. There's something wrong with them.
So your problem with atheists is you've made up a behavior that isn't real, and when you imagine it, it makes you have an icky feeling. It's not just uncomfortable anymore. Now it's full-blown icky. You're getting the ick. It's making me get the ick. But you got a big problem with those atheists and their emotional thinking, right?
They build a lot of emotional arguments that aren't really grounded in anything objective. That's basically what an atheist is. They are the person that walks through a door that someone else opens for them, and they don't say thank you.
What if it's an automatic door? Who do I say thank you to then? Do I just yell it at the security camera, or?
And sometimes it's even worse.
Impossible!
Because there are some atheists that come on TikTok and actively rebuke and mock God.
Sure, maybe, but not literally, not sincerely. As a story character, sure. You know, I think this character is a bastard or whatever. As the thing you believe in that they think is dumb and they're telling you so, sure. Maybe just as an outright troll to get a rise out of you. But literally, as in, I believe there's a God and I shall mock him now, no. Now, you provide 0 examples here. Again, I have no idea if you actually watched anything, so I can't speak to specifics, but if there are any specifics, I have to think that probably, once again, you're just horribly failing to understand what's going on around you. I'm beginning to sense a pattern.
It's basically like you open the door for somebody and they walk through it, and instead of saying thank you, they mock you. They're like, oh, thanks, dumbass. Thanks, doorman, for opening the door for me.
It is so common for theists to be confused what an atheist is. Some of these people seem to think of atheists as basically just theists who won't admit it, except when they do. What a weird breed of God believer. Constantly says he doesn't believe in God, and then turns around and says, actually, I do believe in God, because now I can be mean about it. It makes very little sense as an accusation. I think it has to be based on a huge amount of social stupidity. Just an extremely poor ability to understand why something is being said the way it's said.
And when I think about it from that perspective,
you end up barking up entirely the wrong tree.
Those type of atheists are the most repugnant and repulsive people to exist. They are so ungrateful.
This kind of person I made up inside my head because I don't understand stuff is just awful. Ugh, it makes me want to retch. How can I live in an imaginary world with these people?
So ungrateful to the point that they turn this ungratefulness into this nasty personality.
Man, you're the one making things up just to smear millions of people to gain virtue signaling points with your fellow Muslims. You have no room to talk about other people's personalities. Man, this thing that people do sometimes, it's so irritating. Where they go, oh, I'm nice. I'm the nice one. I would never say a mean thing about the other people. And then they go on to say whatever slanderous nonsense they want, using this fake niceness as a cloak. There must be people out there to whom this is not immediately transparent. They should work on that.
It's so unbecoming of a sincere and good person.
Yeah, you've really shown yourself to be worthy of consideration on this matter. I'll make a note. And then he talks at a bit too long of length about how people in Gaza are being blown up and stuff, and meanwhile they're still praying and thanking God and so on, which is because they're theists. That's why they're doing that. This is supposed to make the atheists look bad by comparison, because the atheists won't thank God for anything. But they're atheists. If you want an atheist to thank God, convince the atheist there's a God. Quit rambling about how they should thank him and start talking about why they should think there's a him. This is not complicated. Your attitude towards atheists here, that they're all ungrateful, terrible people, is basically treating us as theists in denial, or theists with an ungrateful personality. We're not thanking God for holding the door open because we don't like him, or because we don't want to say thank you. But that's not what's going on. That's not what an atheist is. I know it's complicated to understand context like, this person doesn't share my religion, but it's important that you do it if you want to have any comprehension of what's going on around you. I think that might be a bit of a tall order in this case, though.
Oh my God, I can't, like, that level of gratitude is just, it's so virtuous. Like, no one could look at that and be like, think negatively of that. You know what I mean?
Well, the example was someone cradling their child who got blown up. I'm not going to be thinking negatively about that person in that moment, certainly. That has nothing to do with them thanking God. That doesn't reflect on their character, really. It doesn't make them better or worse as a person. They're just talking in their own religious terms. And honestly, thanking God for it is an odd reaction from my perspective. I mean, from one view, the Muslim God directly did it himself. And even if he didn't, he certainly allowed it to be done, in any Muslim view. I think if anything, the level of abject self-devaluation you would have to engage in to be thanking God in a moment like that is a little bit disturbing. I would see that person as worth more than just arbitrarily having their child blown up for the amusement of the super being. And I wish they thought so too. Obviously, this is not intended as criticism of the person. At most, it's criticism of something that has been done to them. But whatever, in that moment, it's neutral at worst. And if it helps that person feel somewhat better somehow, then that's better than neutral.
Anyone with their head screwed on right would be like, wow, like there has to be something about faith that enables somebody to still be grateful in the face of literal hell on earth.
Well, assuming it's an accurate reporting of their true feelings, then I suppose there is. Belief in a God is, of course, a prerequisite to thanking it for anything. If you don't believe there's a God, you can't feel grateful to it. Although you can still feel grateful to anyone who comes along to help you, which I'm sure most people will. Now, whether any particular person really does feel grateful to God in that moment, or if they've just been trained since birth to chant things like that in response to stress, who knows? There's no really effective way to tell, and of course in that moment it doesn't matter. It's probably sometimes one, sometimes the other, and a lot of the time a mix of both. But yeah, if that person really does feel grateful to God for it, I, as a person who doesn't think there's a God there to be grateful to, see the kind of self-debasement required to accept being treated that way by an entity that you think is actually there, to the point of saying thank you for it, as troubling, to say the least. This is the kind of Stockholm Syndrome thinking an abused kidnap victim has. This doesn't inspire admiration, it inspires a mix of pity and horror. You're saying this as if it's supposed to convince me of the value of faith in some way, and it just sends shivers up my spine. It sounds like this person's priorities in life have been severely screwed up by indoctrination with other people's ideas, and I think people deserve better.
Meanwhile, these people are afforded all the luxuries in the world, smartphones for them to mock God, and they're like I said, they live a thankless life. They have nobody to thank for any of the blessings that they have.
I got a family, dude. I live in a town with people that I know and like. Got nobody to thank for nothing. This God or nothing mentality pops up so much. It's incredibly weird.
The innumerable blessings that they have. SubhanAllah. Yeah, atheists are they're just so ungrateful.
Alright, whatever. That's basically the end. He ends by praying for Allah to give us all gratitude. So I noticed something about this video, which is that it's called I Mocked Religion Until This Happened, and there's no mention of him ever having mocked religion or anything happening to stop it. It's a complete lie of a clickbait title. However, I can't really blame him for that because I don't know what the original title of this video was. I don't even know what channel it's from, because this was stolen by whoever runs this YouTube channel called Brother Kareem and reposted with no credit and no commentary, which is all this channel has done for the better part of a year. Nice. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you would, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. Huge thanks to all of my supporters. I rely on them utterly, and they are wonderful. Every single one on every single platform. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See, guy, gratitude. I'm not thanking God for people giving me money. I'm thanking them. Thanks again, everyone, and I will see you next time.